Hi there. I'm Don McKenzie. This is Jeff Ban.
Yep.
We're both faculty in the Transportation Engineering group here in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department at the UW. We also have supporting us here Eric, who's one of our graduate advisors. He's up there as CEG Info. And if you have any questions, you can send them to him through the group chat. And what we'll do is we'll gather those at the end. We'll also try to avoid using anyone's name as we're recording this session, and that way we can post it online later without any privacy concerns. So with that, I guess we'll jump in. So thank you for joining. It's great. We see more and more people joining by the minute here, but we're going to get going. So let's see, there we go. We have a video. We're not going to subject you to a video. I think today, due to both technical challenges and also, you didn't come here to watch a video. You can find the video on YouTube, UW Transportation Engineering. And it introduces our program and kind of a high-level overview of some of the work and opportunities that we have here at the U. Throughout this presentation, you'll see some pictures of our students and in some cases our faculty doing cool things. I thought this would be neat to share. On the left is a group of students from one of my classes a year or two ago. We did a tour of the automotive carbon fiber plant, which is located out in central Washington here. It's a BMW joint venture. Fun trip. And on the right, you see me and you see Professor Ed McCormack. And you see in the pink jacket there, Professor Kelly Patera of National Technical University of Norway. She's one of our alums, did her PhD here with Ann Goodchild a few years ago and is now faculty at NTNU, which is sort of the top technical university in Norway. We were over there with a group of students working collaboratively between the UW and two Norwegian universities, working on a supply chain transportation challenge faced by the seafood industry over there. And so, there's some of these opportunities available to our students that go well beyond the classroom. Anyway, I thought I'd start by kind of giving a bit on our perspective of what's changing in transportation and why transportation engineering is such a fascinating and challenging place to work. And it's really about the convergence of these different technical systems. So whereas in the past, for historically, transportation was kind of its own thing, and there, yes, you have different modes and they all interact in interesting ways. What we see now is operational integration of the transportation system with another complex system, which is the electricity system through electrification of the transport sector. We also see integration of the electricity sector, the electricity system with information and communication systems through what's known as the smart grid, and those kind of mirror ITS, intelligent transportation systems, that have been emerging over the past, I don't know, Jeff, this is your thing, 10, 20, 30 years.
Plus years.
In the transportation field. And so it's really at these interfaces between different systems where a lot of the cool action is and where a lot of the opportunities are. And this, again, is what makes this a really cool area to work. And right in the middle, of course, you have companies like Google, Waymo, that are working on sort of automated vehicles, turning mobility fully into a service, electrically powered, providing this in a way that is very different than the traditional mode of personal car ownership. And so again, this convergence of systems is really creating a lot of challenges. If you're a transportation professional or a DOT, or local or state or federal government, big challenges. But for engineers and researchers, a lot of really interesting opportunities and fun stuff to study. And this is kind of mirrored in kind of how the way we see the field evolving and the way that we've been working to position our graduate programs in transportation engineering here at the UW. So you might say that sort of traditionally, transportation engineering has been mostly about designing and operating streets, roads, and highway systems. That's especially true in the US, of course. But where it's really going is sort of more broadly again, providing and optimizing the mobility of people and goods. So getting people and goods where they need to be when they need to be there. It's really more of almost turning the whole system into a logistics system. And to make this happen, there's this sort of gap in skills that's created. And so to make this happen, we really need to be training, educating a workforce that understands things like logistics and operations, optimization, machine learning, data management and analysis of large, messy data sets, and understands networks and resiliency concerns that arise. So this is really how the field's evolving, and we're working on creating a program that really prepares our students to go off and work in that field. So what makes transportation challenging? There's a whole lot of things, right? But these are also the things that make it fun. These are complex problems, meaning there are many people involved, many stakeholders involved, high levels of political attention, competing goals, and there's a need to kind of draw on expertise from many different disciplines. So transportation is definitely not just a technical discipline. It draws on an understanding of how people are going to use that system. So it demands an understanding of behavior to really design and operate a system and keep it working well. That's related to this idea of distributed decision making. That's distributed decision making both on the planning side, where you have decisions being made at the local, the federal, the state level, but also at the individual level, day to day, as people go about using the system. And this is a dynamic and ever-changing system, right? No day is ever like any other day. And there's a great deal of uncertainty as we look to the future over how the system will evolve. And that, again, creates challenges in how do we design that system and make investments that are going to last for 50 years. So, again, this is what makes it challenging. And it's also what makes it a lot of fun, that it's not just sitting down and solving a quantitative problem. It's framing that problem correctly, understanding those political and social constraints that you're operating within. So on the left here, there's a photo of one of our PhD students. This is Elise Lewis. She's an ENO fellow. ENO is the ENO Center for Transportation is, what would you call it, Jeff? Like a think tank kind of?
Yeah, it's maybe a nonprofit.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit, sort of a think tank that aims to kind of cultivate leaders in transportation. And so they take a class of fellows every year, bring them to DC for a week. They meet with policymakers, they meet with one another. And so we're happy to see Elise go this past year and get to participate in that.
Also, they cover your travel expenses.
Yes, oh yes.
So another thing I want to add, I don't know for people who are participating now, your background is that all from civil, or you're from urban planning or other disciplines. What I wanted to see, based on what Don mentioned, is that transportation is so diversified, they need expertise from all areas. So no matter what your background is, you can always find something interesting and some contribute to solving the problems. So that's.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Jeff. We have, I don't think we have a slide on that, but that's a message we've been trying to get out there. Looking back over the past 5 years that I've been here, some of the best students that we've had at the grad level have come from backgrounds other than CEE. Now, some of the best have also come from CEE, right. But we've had, folks with backgrounds in math, international relations, economics, education, all kinds of different backgrounds, and they bring different perspectives. And again, because it's not every, almost, no transportation problem is like another transportation problem, but there's always this element of operating in a social and political environment that you need to deal with. And so an appreciation of those constraints is really key.
But we do have a faculty's background, which you can tell a little bit of.
We do. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Look, there it is.
Yeah.
So I like this. Well, I like Venn diagrams in general, as you'll probably tell by the end of this presentation, but I really like this one because what you see here is most of us have at least one degree outside of civil and environmental engineering. So Ann Goodchild has a math background. Yinhai Wang has a computer science master's degree. Jeff has degrees in automotive engineering and CS.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Actually, I'm kind of an outlier in that I don't have any degrees in civil engineering. Linda Boyle is industrial engineering, Ed McCormack's geography. Yeah, I'm like the moon out there orbiting around. But yeah, so, but this is quite effective because we bring, as faculty, we bring all these different perspectives. It enables us to tackle a wider range of problems and bring a greater breadth of expertise. So I think this really speaks to the way that we try to structure our program as well. So again, you know, why do we need this? Where are we going as a field? You know, I'd say that, you know, transportation engineering still is about, you know, planning, designing, analyzing, operating infrastructure and the transportation systems that operate on that infrastructure. And why, again, it's about moving people and goods from where they are to where they need to be. But kind of, again, the change today is that we're focusing a lot more on operations rather than just the infrastructure. And to do that, we need tools for the analysis and management of large amounts of data, and really to understand how to build models and tools that are data driven. And again, understanding the impacts that transportation has in other areas of society, other areas of life, because that imposes, you know, constraints. And again, that's really what we're trying to do with transportation is make people's lives better and support a strong economy. So I want to say a bit about some of the programs we have here. We actually have a number of distinct but somewhat overlapping graduate programs here. We have a thesis-based master's program that's sort of a traditional 2-year master's degree that operates mainly as a feeder into our PhD program. And then we have 2 non-thesis master's programs. The PacTrans master's program is one that offers fellowship funding to students. It's typically completed in 1 year, and students complete a concurrent set of internships. There's also a broader non-thesis master's program that attracts many international students, although it also attracts some domestic students. And that can be completed in 1 year, but many students choose to spread it out over 2 years. Again, students often do an internship along the way there as well. We also have 2 fully online master's programs. The Supply Chain Transportation and Logistics program, which is run by our SCTL Center led by Professor Goodchild, and the Master of Sustainable Transportation that's led by Ed McCormack. Those are fully online, and the first 3 are traditional campus-based programs. Anything to add? Good. Okay. And I think one of the big strengths of our campus programs in particular is the flexibility that they afford you. And I'll say more about this, but they have a great deal of flexibility. The idea is we want to equip you with a foundation of skills in sort of data management, statistics and data analysis, optimization, network analysis, programming, and then, you know, students can apply these across any number of domains or application areas, whether that's sort of transportation planning or highway operations or freight, transit, etc. The idea here is that you can kind of build the program that meets your needs and your interests and goals. So our current graduate program basically requires 4 classes. And so that's shown here. It's a little misleading because the top row statistics, pretty much everyone who applies to this program comes in having taken some kind of introductory probability and stats class. So that 315, stat 390 that's listed there, most people come in with that already. And so there's an intermediate stats requirement that's CET 584. And then you basically have to choose one of 2 classes in these 3 areas, the planning area, the operations and ITS area, and the freight and logistics area. It's just choose one of those. So it's sort of 4 required classes. And that's pretty much it. You can take all of these if you want, but many students take this and then they go and take classes in other departments. So you can take classes in statistics or urban planning, public policy, or industrial engineering, wherever it makes sense, again, to meet your career goals and your needs. I do want to note that we're in the process of revising our graduate curriculum. I think it's safe to say that it will be a little more structured. We're trying to establish a little more of a common foundation. So we will probably have the same number of required, probably 4 to 5 classes will be required, but those will be the same classes for everyone. And then there will be more flexibility. We'll maintain that ability to kind of flexibly build on top of that. But our sense is that by doing that, we can ensure that students have a foundational level of skills, and then they'll be able to go further and develop topics more fully in their electives. So that's something we're working on right now. We're hoping to roll out next year. There's also some options for concurrent degrees and certificates. These are some examples that our students have pursued recently. So my students and Linda Ing Boyle's students in particular, a number have gotten a master's in statistics while they've been here. Elise Lewis is doing an international development policy and management certificate. Other students, we have quite a few students who come into the program from urban planning and go and do an urban planning degree. And I want to say a bit about funding. This is important. So many of our graduate students secure funding. There's a number of funding sources available to support students. So the traditional route is sort of research assistantships and teaching assistantships. So research assistantships generally go to research track students, those being thesis master's students and PhD students. TA-ships, teaching assistantships, usually go to PhD students because they're in the best position to take on a teaching role. And then for US citizens and permanent residents, we have our PACTRANS internship and PACTRANS fellowship program. So PACTRANS is our Pacific Northwest Transportation Consortium. This is a consortium of universities, the UW leads it, Washington State University, Oregon State University, University of Idaho, and University of Alaska Fairbanks are our main partners in PACTRANS. And this is a partnership that's been going in one form or another for more than 30 years. And what it does is it brings both research dollars to support research assistantships, and it also brings fellowship money to support the tuition of professional track, non-thesis students through our PACTRANS Fellows program. And we fund typically 5 or 6 of those per year. We have a number of other university transportation centers that were funded that the UW is a partner on. I've identified these at the bottom. So there's C2 Smart. Jeff is our lead on that. That's based out of New York University. There is TomNet. That's based out of Arizona State. Cynthia Chen is the main person here involved with that. There's Florida International is accelerated bridge construction. That's not maybe your bread and butter transportation engineering. And what's that? CSET. That's a Center for Safety and Equity in Transportation. Yeah.
That's in Alaska.
That's based in Alaska. Yeah. So what's great right now, being at the UW with all these centers is it means that there's a lot of connections that we have to other universities and lots of funding flowing around.
And connection with agencies.
Yes.
And industry as well, because industry involved with some of those activities.
Yeah. Anyway, and then one final thing to mention here is our VALA program. This is a scholarship program that supports exchanges to Scandinavian and Baltic universities. So the countries, if you know all your flags, what do we have? Iceland, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and it must be Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, I think, the Baltic states. Yeah. Anyway, this is a frankly highly underutilized program. It's really open only to students in civil and environmental engineering or the College of Built Environments. We've had a number of transportation students who've gone over on this exchange program over the last few years. Typically, the priority is for PhD students, but it also gets opened up to master's students as well.
To be a domestic student or US citizen?
I think you might need to be a citizen, maybe a citizen, possibly citizen permanent resident. But yes, it's intended to be a cultural exchange in part between the U.S. and these countries. So research here is organized into a set of labs, and each lab is generally led by one faculty member. And that makes it sound very much, I think that makes it sound very siloed and like we all have our little fiefdoms.
But we do have collaboration.
Yeah,
it's not.
Exactly, right? So we certainly collaborate, but typically students have a primary advisor, and then we collect the students that we're advising into a lab, and then that PI or the faculty lead on that lab is sort of the one who's responsible for for managing those students and advising them and securing funding and so on. So those are all listed here. I'm the Sustainable Transportation Lab, and Jeff is the Intelligent Urban Transportations.
Yeah, the weird figure.
Yeah.
One of my students come up with that logo. So
I need to contract out a new logo, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what you can do is, I think everyone has their own lab website. You can go to those labs and learn more about the research that they're doing. You can certainly also ask us questions as this webinar goes on, but I don't want to get bogged down on details. I think, again, mirroring this kind of ongoing revolution in transportation is, this idea that the job prospects for transportation engineers are becoming a lot more diverse. So on the left side here are what we would kind of call your traditional transportation jobs, sort of in government and in consultancies that contract with governments, and that's sort of been your traditional bread and butter transportation engineering. So there's many companies. They operate locally, they operate globally, and our students have gone, I think the ones we've listed here are, this is by no means exhaustive, but all of these are companies that we've had students and interns go to. Yeah. And then on the right here are what you might call new mobility companies, and this is sort of more of these tech-driven, emerging companies that are creating a lot of new job prospects for our grads. And these are all companies, I don't know that we've had alums go to all these, but these are all companies we've either had alums go. Well, One Bus Away was founded by some UW students. These are companies where we've had grads go. These are also places we have ongoing research partnerships. So these are, companies share data with us, share analytical effort with us, partner with us through things like PacTrans and C2 Smart. So join through these centers and partner with us. So we're working hard to build those up and get our students connected to those companies. And so that's really, I think, what we had. Our contact information is here. Of course, you can work Google too, so I'm sure you can find us easily enough. I think it's safe to say you're welcome to contact any of us, particularly if there's someone in particular whose work is of interest to you. But again, Jeff and I are also here to answer questions right now.
Great. Thank you, Don. Yep. You get some questions?
We didn't even lose anyone along the way.
We gained one.
we had 12, but no questions yet.
Oh, any questions?
How do we apply for PacTrans?
PacTrans Fellow?
PacTrans Fellowship, yeah. I think you want to just indicate in your statement of purpose that you're interested in that it's not hard.
Yeah. Well, even if you didn't, we probably will consider if you're qualified.
Yes. Yeah. We'll generally consider all people who are eligible.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's of interest to you, certainly flag that as a reason you're interested in coming.
Can you apply for both the PacTrans non-thesis and thesis master's degree routes?
Simultaneously?
Yeah.
I guess so. But in the end of the day, you have to pick one, I guess. Yeah. Right?
Yes. So,
you can switch in the middle, I believe. But
I think in the bad old days, there was a little more switching back and forth, but they've they've kind of cracked down on that.
Oh, okay.
We don't really allow students to float back and forth between the two programs, and I think it's partly due to, I don't know,
Fairness to our
the
students.
details, the inner workings
Yeah.
of how the university and accounting systems
Yeah.
work. What can happen, and what I have seen happen, is a non-thesis student switch into the thesis
Yep.
track.
Yep.
So we had a student a couple of years ago who came in as a PacTrans fellow, and the VALA program was underutilized that year. There were no PhD students who wanted to go. And so we switched him over to the thesis master's track, and he applied and he went and spent a year in Sweden.
Yep.
And so that can happen. You wouldn't want to count on that happening, but you certainly can apply to all of these, and you can indicate your interest
Yep.
in all of them. And at the end of the day, we'll also make offers to people. So you can indicate your interest, and then it's also, if you say you're interested in a thesis track, but we can't find, so when you come in as a thesis student, we're admitting you with the expectation, like Jeff lets you in and Jeff's going to fund you, for instance, or I let you in and I'm going to fund you. If there's no one who has a spot available for a research assistant that year, we're not going to reject your application. We're going to contact you and sound out your interest in going through the PacTrans Fellows program instead, for example, right? So you're not gonna hurt yourself by applying for the wrong program. We're going to give you due consideration. I thought there was one other thing I wanted to add, but no.
Kind of a follow-up question. Are you able to be involved in research even if you're considering the non-thesis route?
Oh yeah, we want to add that. So the answer is yes, and probably you have to.
Yeah.
Because even for the no thesis master program, you will have to finish a research project, and you have to complete a report and present that to at least to faculty. It's not a formal like thesis or it's just a report or paper to present and to show the work that you have done. So normally you work with a faculty member on that topic.
Yeah. So I've had students who showed up one day and said, "Here's my research paper. See you in a week to do my presentation." And
That happens.
As you might guess, for the kind of student who does that and gets away with it, it was one of the best ones. But most students, come and engage with you over like a period of 2 quarters and get your input, get your direction on, how they should do this. So just to be clear, the thesis track involves a thesis, and a thesis is a substantially bigger research undertaking than what we call the research paper. So the research paper or report is what you have to do for the non-thesis. Both the regular non-thesis and the PacTrans non-thesis involve this report that's about, let's say, on the order of 15 pages.
It's more like a very extensive course project, I would say. For 1 quarter or 2 quarters, you get credits like 3 or 4.
Yeah, you do. You get 3 credits. I would say probably most of the students that I advise do more than 3 credits worth of work on their research paper. We could make it 6, but then you'd have to pay more tuition, right? Yeah. So, but it's not a trivial undertaking, but it's not nearly as ambitious as a thesis. Although, again, we've had some students who've really taken it to the next level. So, to your original question, can you get involved in research? Yes, you can. And in fact, yes, you must to a certain degree. Whether students kind of do the bare minimum for their research paper or whether they really get involved, I certainly have students who come to all my lab meetings every week and are really, really engaged on the research side, even though they're not research track students, they're non-thesis students, but they're excited by the research and want to participate. And I do my best to integrate them as best I can. In some ways, you have more freedom in that situation because when you're on a thesis track and a research assistantship, it's like, well, I'm sitting there, Jeff's sitting there going, well, here's the funded projects, the grants, the contracts we have. So this is kind of, you got some latitude, but you got to kind of stay within the box here and do the work that we have to get done for our sponsors. When you're non-thesis, it's, you can kind of do what you want. And we like that too. A student who is creative and wants to go in some new direction and has a lot of energy, we're happy to put time into advising them to do something cool.
Oftentimes the work can be summarized as a paper to a form of journal publication. And in some cases, the students may end up doing a PhD. We don't want to scare you for that, but there are cases. I think both Don and myself have those cases. Students started with master's degrees, no thesis, but end up with a PhD.
We have a request for you to provide overviews of your current research and what you're both working on.
Oh, you want to start?
Oh, I can start. So I can summarize my work mainly to look at the system aspect of transportation. Like you have new technology, you have new data, you have new systems. How to evaluate not only local impact, but as a system like multimodal transportation networks, how that impact congestion, emissions. For example, we have this Uber, Lyft, we call them new shared mobility options, then how this operation will impact congestion or emissions in the city or in a city network. But for doing that, I will have to, one particular, aspect I've been looking at is the data aspect. How can we learn from the increasingly available data from either traditional sources, some of you may know the loop detectors and cameras and everything, to the so-called big data, like from your cell phones, from the apps, from any of the mobile devices that you can collect those data and make sense of the data, either from looking at signal performance, like how many cars waiting to be cleared at the traffic lights, to how people travel in the Puget Sound region. How many trips they make every day, the trip time and things like that. So we learn those things from the data and try to use the data to build up models and to evaluate the performance of the system. So I hope it's not too abstract, but that's sort of like.
Yeah, so I can kind of say in the Sustainable Transportation Lab, kind of what we aspire to is to look at sustainability as not just environmental issues, but sort of the overlap of environmental, economic, and social or equity considerations. So we see that as kind of sometimes called the three-legged stool of sustainability, equity, environment, and economy. And we view those as kind of outcomes that emerge from the interaction of technology and policy and behavior. So rather than, we don't really do a lot of like straight up technology development in our lab. It's more focused on how do we think people are going to use that technology and how is that behavior and that use of technology mediated by public policy. So to give you some specific examples of things we have going on right now, right? So to go from that extremely high level abstract description down to some very specific examples, we have a project with the Washington State Department of Transportation to build a statewide simulation model to predict demand for electric vehicle charging, to better understand where to locate and how to size fast charging stations to support electric vehicles. We have a related project on modeling the behavior of people who own EVs, modeling their decisions to use an EV for a given trip, and then if they're using their EV, when and where to charge it. So we're kind of integrating that micro level behavioral modeling into this statewide simulation. We have another project funded by the DOE through the US-China Clean Energy Research Center that is focused on modeling adoption and use behavior related to both mobility as a service and automated vehicles. So trying to understand how do people choose to adopt and use these new services, and particularly if those services are delivered with automated vehicles. So that's another project. We have a project with an industry-funded project with Toyota that is looking at sort of the design. How would you design and specify a mobility service, a commute-focused mobility service, and what's the best service concept. Is it first last mile? Is it door-to-door service? Is it large shared vehicles or small personal vehicles? Those are kind of the variables that we're exploring through that work. So those are some examples of specific projects that we have. We really strive to kind of be in the areas of electrification, automation, and services, mobility services.
We have a question about if there's potentially official concurrent degree between the Masters in Urban Planning and Transportation programs in the future. Do you know if anything like that's potentially in the works?
Yeah, I think we have quite a few cases of those students, mostly from urban planning, doing a concurrent degree with civil. But I'm assuming we can do the other way.
Yeah,
so
and those are all
the time.
Unofficial currently, but do you know if there's anything with the university recognizing like as a track you enter upon admission?
I don't, if you're thinking kind of like the MST at MIT or something, nothing like that. There's not like a joint degree program.
You have to do both.
Yeah, you do both. But yeah, I think we pretty much admit, if we have an urban planning student who applies, we pretty much make it happen unless we have, reason to have reservations about their preparation. But in general, the students who choose to apply know what they're getting into. I don't know how many we have go the other way. We certainly have a lot who start in urban planning and come over.
Yeah. And then there's kind of a couple of questions around work experience and prior research experience, the best way to kind of show that on the application. Should they be submitting resumes and CVs? How much do you look at that when considering an applicant?
Maybe I can start. I think for the research track, your previous research experience definitely will help, because you're supposed to work with a faculty member, work on some research project. So the prior experience will definitely helpful. If you do a no thesis or PacTrans type of master degree, I'm not exactly sure. I think it's going to be helpful, but maybe not as that significant as the research track. That's So we value, at least in my view of the applications, I look at, of course, your GPAs and testing scores, and also your the statement, but also we look at the recommendation letters and things like that. Your experience will help. It's just one aspect.
Yeah, I want to say we give a pretty thorough look to every applicant. We typically have, we have two of us review each one?
Two, yeah, at least two.
And then often we go through them. We discuss every one more or less when we sit down as a group as faculty. Yeah. So I think if it's in there, you don't want to make the reader work for it, right? It's kind of just anytime you're writing, don't make the reader work for it. But if it's in there, it should come out. I would say, it's not a job. You don't need to worry about, one-page resume kind of thing. Like, you also don't need to stretch it to 12. But don't feel artificially constrained that you have to limit yourself to 1 or 2 pages. Yeah. We're gonna look through these things and see what's in there. Again, I would say from my perspective, the need for prior research experience, it kind of depends on the level you're applying for. So if you're applying for a PhD program, I'm going to look for you to have demonstrated some research competence, generally having published a paper before I admit you. So also that means students who are coming in on the non-thesis track here and are thinking about PhD programs here or elsewhere, getting involved in research is really important early on. So that's kind of for PhD students. At the master's level, personally, I don't necessarily expect prior research experience. It's not always practical to have that when you're coming out of a bachelor's degree, but it certainly will help. And what I am looking for is genuine interest in the work that we're doing, and creativity and willingness to kind of take on poorly defined problems. Which does remind me of something that I wanted to mention earlier, which is something that international students, I don't know what the mix here is of domestic versus international, but Something international students do really well and domestic students don't do so well at all is reaching out to faculty members before they apply. This can be very helpful for us to get to know you, to learn about what your research interests are, and to be able, when we're sitting down and reviewing applications, see not just what's on the paper, but what have we learned through either emailing back and forth or I try and I can't talk to everyone, but I try and talk to a number of students every year before they even apply. And so those interactions are another chance for us to both make sure that you're targeting your statement to the right faculty advisor based on your interests, and also for us to kind of get to know you and understand what you're bringing.
Somebody was asking about programming languages, especially with the heavy emphasis on modeling and data analysis. Are there specific languages that are good to know beforehand?
I think any programming experience will be helpful. If you know MATLAB, that's great. But increasingly, people nowadays are looking at Python, which is more like widely used almost by everybody, I would say. Even my 10-year-old is learning Python, so you should probably start to learn, because it's a pretty easy to learn language, especially if you have some programming experience, like either Java or C or MATLAB. Picking up Python is not going to be very hard. So
there's no formal requirement, but some experience can be helpful. I guess we could say a little bit like it. So I think in different classes here, you will learn different tools. So in 584, that's the stats that I teach, that's built mainly around R. I believe Cynthia Chen's travel demand forecasting, they do a lot of work in R too. I used to do MATLAB, and now I'm using Python to keep up with the trend. Yeah, and I think what we're trying to do is again think strategically with our curriculum. Can we give our students not just one, but like 2 or 3 tools that they go out and they go on the job market and they can kind of have a basic level of competency. You look at a lot of these data science jobs at companies like Lyft and Uber and Car2Go and so on, and it's often they want you to know like R and Python or something, something along those lines. And so that's kind of what we want to prepare you with. But we sort of start out assuming no knowledge coming in the door of R or Python, but that prior experience will certainly help you.
Another application question: do you prefer professional or academic recommendations?
Go ahead. That's a good question.
I don't know that we have a blanket answer to that.
Most are academic, right?
I would say most of them probably have academic recommendations, but many of our applicants come directly from their undergrad degree. And if you ask different faculty, you will get different answers on whether you should come straight from an undergrad degree or whether it's better to work first. I'm a strong advocate for working before you apply. Yin-Hai Wang, I know, is an advocate of just, if you know you want to go to grad school, just go to grad school. I'm not sure where Jeff comes down. But the fact is many of our students do come straight from undergrad, and so the people who can write them the most meaningful letters are their undergraduate faculty advisors or professors. If you're applying for a research track, then I would say 1 to 2 references from professors can be helpful, because they will say something hopefully about your research abilities or indications that they've had towards your research abilities. If you've been out working for a while, I think it's good to see a professional reference, because otherwise, what, does your boss not have anything good to say about you? So that's kind of an issue that comes up. So especially for the professional track, it's great to have students in the program with work experience and who've been productive, engaged members of the professional community. So a professional reference is great in that regard. I'd say the guiding principle is probably the people who are in the best position to judge and accurately report on your capabilities and your potential.
And More of a process question. People want to know, do you know what the timeline of decisions is typically? I know it's pretty dependent on how many applications and things like that. But
We probably by the middle, well, we probably look at the applications around January time.
Yeah,
By mid-February, we probably have some meetings already and have some initial kind of list of the candidates we have interest, right? So, and then, yeah.
So this is an incredibly frustrating question. So actually for non-thesis and pack trans, we can probably get our initial offers out on those in, I hate to say a date, probably February, early to mid-February.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're going to hold me to that, right?
Well, March, let's see March.
Well, but folks need answers and they got decisions to make, right?
Yeah.
I know we've tried to make our decisions earlier, but our big annual transportation conference, the Transportation Research Board annual meeting, is in mid-January this year. It's a little later than normal. It'll probably be the week of January 20th or so before is the earliest we'll be able to sit down and start reviewing these. My hope would be we might have some offers out as early as early February. On the research side, there's this additional wrinkle that when we make an offer, we're basically making a commitment to fund you.
Yep.
And you know, between mid-February and mid-April, a lot can change in terms of what proposals, what grants and contracts have we gotten funded, how does our staffing look for the coming year relative to our resources. So sometimes those offers will trickle out later and later. And I think an unfortunate reality that is, I will say, is not unique to us is there's a lot of gaming that happens where, you know, people they got an offer from the UW, but they kind of sit on it because maybe they also applied to Berkeley and maybe for some reason they want to go to Berkeley. So that they'll kind of sit on it, and then meanwhile there's someone at Berkeley who really wanted to go to Texas, and Berkeley's got an offer out to them, and so it kind of cascades around, and there's this kind of alignment. So it often means there's a bunch of last minute flurry in the last few weeks as people kind of start accepting final offers and so on. So it's a highly non-ideal process and stressful. Believe me, not just for you all, but for us as well. But certainly, it's a lot tidier on the non-thesis side. It's on the research track side where things get a little messy.
Contact us or the department staff if you really show your interest, to come here. That's what you want. Let them know.
How much do you look at the GRE and how is that weighed compared to GPA? And is there a minimum GRE score that you're looking for?
So I wish we didn't have to rely on the GRE, but the challenge we face is there's a real shortage of standardized measures. There's a real lack of information about how GPAs at different universities compare with one another. So it's really hard for us to see a GPA and know what that really means because there's so much variability from institution to institution. So we do rely on GREs to get kind of a standardized view of certain, of an admittedly narrow set of capabilities.
But we didn't
hard minimums. We certainly, I think, we're looking for almost universally I don't know, certainly above average quantitative. I would say many or most of the people we admit are probably 80th percentile and above. It's not to say that you couldn't get in, but that's where most of our students are. On the verbal and the writing,
I look at the writing because 3.5 or more. We look at your personal statement and others, but sometimes this writing in the GRE can give you a more standardized.
I would say we get a lot of international students who have a 3.0 on their GRE analytical writing. It's not my preferred score. Like Jeff said, 3.5 and above is nice. We get pretty worried if it's below a 3.0, I'd say. But if we excluded everyone with a 3.0, our class would get a lot smaller.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're a domestic student,
We should have.
you probably should be above a 3.0.
3.5.
Yeah. You're going to want to, and certainly we get plenty who come in with 4s, 5s, 5.5 domestically. So, again, but the short answer is we don't have a hard cutoff.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no official cutoff, but hopefully that gives you a sense. Anything else?
How do you, this is kind of elaborating more on that, but more like, how does undergrad school reputation play in?
Oh, undergrad. Oh, okay.
Like if a student, is coming from an Ivy League versus a, non-Ivy League school.
That's who's asking. So maybe this is that's a hard question to answer. So I would say it's probably a factor, but being the C student at Harvard isn't exactly impressive, right? We've been through top universities and we kind of know how things work there. And so if you're a solid student from a prestigious university, that's going to give you a leg up on someone who's a solid student from a mid-tier or lower tier university. But it's not, the institution brand is not a trump card. We're still looking for you to have good letters, to say something intelligent in your statement, to have reasonable test scores, all of that.
Yeah. So it's a package, right? That's why we have a package. It's not like a single factor will determine your admission or not.
Yeah.
And one final question. You said earlier that it's great to reach out to you. Is that specifically for research track students, or if a student is applying for the non-thesis masters, do you still suggest they reach out to different faculty, or?
I'd say it's less important, but it's not a bad idea.
Unless,
besides, we want to try and convince you to do a thesis track.
Especially if you have specific questions or interest, right? I think for the no thesis track, but if you're a research track, I think it's recommended, especially PhD students are highly recommended to contact with the faculty members that you are interested to work with.
Yeah, non-thesis not as essential. Yeah.
Okay, I think that about wraps it up.
Oh, good.
All right, cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Hope to see you here at UW.
We can hang out for a minute if any other questions trickle in.
Good question.
Thank you all.
Thank you.